Please sit. Good morning, everyone. Please be seated. Apart from NSS volunteers, others, please be seated. Good morning, everyone. I, Dr. Sandesh, welcome all of you for today's interactive session with Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman, Honorable Finance Minister, Government of India. Madam, we are honored to have you here with us at Malleswaram Ladies Association, a 97-year-old institution run by women of Malleswaram for the women empowerment. Now, to start the function formally, I welcome Srimati Rachana for the invocation song.
వెంకటాచల నిలయం వైకుంఠపురవాసం వెంకటాచల నిలయం వైకుంఠపురవాసం పంకజనేత్రం పరమ పవిత్రం పంకజనేత్రం పరమ పవిత్రం శంఖచక్రధర చిన్మయ రూపం వెంకటాచల నిలయం వైకుంఠపురవాసం అంబుజోద్భవ వినూతం అగణిత గుణనామం అంబుజోద్భవ వినూతం అగణిత గుణనామం తుంబురు నారద గాన విలోలం తుంబురు నారద గాన విలోలం వెంకటాచల నిలయం వైకుంఠపురవాసం మకర కుండలధర మదన గోపాలం మకర కుండలధర మదన గోపాలం భక్త పోషక శ్రీ పురందర విఠలం వెంకటాచల నిలయం వైకుంఠపురవాసం. థ్యాంక్ యూ.
With the blessing of Supreme Power, we shall begin our program. Now I welcome Dr. Lakshmi V. Nageshwara, Honorary Secretary, Malleswaram Ladies Association, for welcoming our guest.
Pranams to Nirmala Sitharaman ji. Good morning to everyone present here. It's an honor and we are blessed to have a woman at this great position, and we are blessed to have her in our Malleswaram Ladies Association premises. Actually, if I have to talk about her, I have to talk pages, but just one page I would like to read about ma'am and introduce her. Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji is serving as the Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs of Government of India since 2019. Nirmala ji is the proud daughter of our Karnataka, representing Karnataka as the member of the Rajya Sabha, the upper house of the Indian Parliament, since 2016. She previously represented Andhra Pradesh from 2014 to 16 in Rajya Sabha. Nirmala Sitharaman previously served as the 28th Defense Minister from 2017 to 2019. And her own daughter is in the armed forces. Thereby, no, she's not there? Okay. Thereby becoming India's second women defense minister and the second women finance minister after Indira Gandhi. and the first ever full-time women minister to hold each of those portfolios. Nirmala Sitharaman also served as Minister of State in the Ministry of Finance and Minister of State in the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Minister of State independent charge for the Ministry of Commerce and Industry from May 2014 to September 2017. Nirmala Sitharamanji was born in Madurai, Tamil Nadu. She had a schooling from Madras and Tiruchirappalli. She has obtained Bachelor of Arts degree in Economics from the Sita Lakshmi Ramaswamy College, Tiruchirappalli in 1980. Then Master of Arts degree in Economics and MPhil from Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi in 1984. She joined the Bharatiya Janata Party in 2006 and became its national spokesman in 2010. Nirmala ji is known for her intellectual and oratory skills on contemporary socio-economic, socio-political issues of the nation. Nirmala Sitharaman ji has presented annual budgets of the nation. India reached the mark of a $3.1 trillion economy under her successful leadership. We proudly welcome Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji for this event. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. It is time for which we were waiting for. I welcome Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ma'am to address the audience.
Good morning to all. It so reminds me of my school and college days. Promptly and with that strength. Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, sir. To the office bearers of Malleswaram Ladies Association, the principals of the various institutions, and more importantly to all the girl students who have assembled here. I see a few boys as well. Students? Yeah? Boy students as well. It gives me immense pleasure. I can't say this in as much words, but it gives me immense pleasure to be among you all today. It's not very often that ministers get called to institutions where girls are oh powerful presence. That's not to undermine the boys, but the fact is we need that extra support for girls. We need that extra support for girls because temperamentally, how much ever we can contribute, we come in gently and sometimes it is mistaken for being not confident. Sometimes it's mistaken to be not being sure of oneself or probably not having the necessary stuff. So that extra support is only to help you cross that threshold. After that we are equal and more. So no worries once you cross the threshold. And therefore addressing girl students, and I must acknowledge that in my school days, in my college days, I've always studied in girls' schools and girl college. It's only when I went to JNU I had boys among classmates. But I've always felt India's education system has benefited immensely by all these girls' schools and colleges because they don't give protection to the girls, but they give them the sense of what collective strength of girls can be. And as a result, you end up being sure that it's all right. Between boys, or among girls, it's all the same, we'll do it. So it's not an inward-looking approach to run girls' education institutions. These are institutions in which the natural blooming of the girl, and in the company of larger number of girls, you realize there is some energy and contribution that you can individually make. And therefore, let me first of all give my word of appreciation for the Malleswaram Ladies Association for having, for almost nearly 100 years, run this institute. Because as you grow, you will know to found an institution and then sustain it and then allow it to grow and flourish for this many number of years is not at all an easy task. And because you've lasted this many years and you've shown the benefit that can be derived by students who are studying here, I wish you many more 100 years. Today, with the national education policy, education institutes have been given a lot more flexibility to handle the curriculum the way they want, the way they think it's adaptable for the communities in which they are working, the way they can bring in additional advantages to the students. So the NEP, for the first time in India's education scenario, has brought in that exhaustive map in which individual wheels can operate so that the collective movement will be to benefit a larger population. It's not tailor-made sitting in Delhi to suit all states. It's not tailor-made to suit all those who want to go to engineering. And it's not tailor-made only to suit those who are stereotypically, girls means they have to go to commerce and boys means they have to go to science. No. It allows the cross movements also with great sense of flexibility. And therefore, I would think the national education policy should be read, reread, and some students who got that inclination should also sit with the management, read it, reread it, and then adapt it to suit your institution. That flexibility which is available should not be lost. It should be made to benefit your students. So I would strongly recommend that from the management and from the teachers and from the students, some people sit together to see what exactly is the flexibility it offers, what are the kind of ways in which you can utilize it so that students benefit from the flexibility that it offers. When I say flexibility, it also brings in versatility, brings in various different things. So you should have that brought in. I know I'm talking to young minds. And politics is normally seen as, don't bring it to the students, they are still actively studying. There's a point in that argument. But the young minds also should be well informed. Whether you want to be active today in active politics, or whether you want to be active some other time, or whether you will never want to be active in politics, that's your choice. But you should be informed of what is happening around you. And in that context, I would want to put before you how India is placed today in the global scenario, briefly, how within India those festering problems that which was facing us are being addressed, and how we are not just focusing on today's issues, but we are also looking at a future which will be largely future for our young. Because India is one of those countries whose young population is much more than the older population as of now. And for the young population, for today and for their future, it is the duty of the government of the day to make sure they are given enough prospects for the future. So that's where I want to put some facts before you. Globally, all countries suffered during the pandemic. There was not even one island somewhere remotely in the Pacific Ocean which was left free. No, all countries were affected. The earlier experiences of such kind of widespread pandemic was some 100 years ago. They call it the Spanish flu. At that time also, it wasn't so widespread. So before us, there was no template with which we could say, at that time we handled it like that, so this time we can handle it like this. No template was available for any country. So everybody was advising one another, saying, you should do it like this, otherwise your people are going to suffer, you have to do this way, that way. All kinds of suggestions came from all quarters. And not just for India, for everybody. But what India did was to constantly engage with all stakeholders, businesses, small manufacturing units, large manufacturing units, MSMEs, women, elder citizens, all of them were consulted in the process. And for each of the sectors, we designed something so that they will also be given a helping hand. Therefore, what has resulted for us is everyone, maybe we can do a lot more. I'll say that even before I establish any of my assumptions. We could have done a lot more, but within given limitations, we tried addressing each of the problem. As a result, without having splurged money, without having irresponsible meaning, it's all people's money, it has to be spent on people, but how, when, where was also important. Some people at that time had also advised us to say, print money and spend it. It doesn't matter. That print money business happened in many countries. Today, they are facing a situation of that extra printed money still being in the economy, as a result of which there's excess money, which means some of you all who are studying economics will understand, and many of you all who have that kind of aptitude will understand, if there's excess money floating around, which doesn't have a supportive underpinning worthy gold or some valuable, that money adds to the inflation. So when inflation was high, because of this money, excessive money, governments tried sucking that money in, but not very many of them were successful. As a result, those economies are facing unprecedented inflation. Whereas because we took a very calibrated approach, today we have an inflation which is slightly above the tolerance limit, but which is constantly being worked at so that it can be brought down. And in the meanwhile, we did not hesitate to carry on those systemic reforms that we need to do. Unless the reforms also happen, system remains the same. Newer businesses which are coming in feel this is too harassing, and therefore they take their own time to set up business, corruption breeds in, and so on. The reform measures also were taken up even during the pandemic. As a result, today India is the fastest growing economy. Fastest growing not just for India this year, but India next year as well. While many countries abroad, which are well known to have been developed countries, are nowhere near good growth, which is so important for recovering from the pandemic itself. So it's a story which has back and forth. You need to have good growth to recover from the pandemic. And unless you recover from the pandemic, this growth is not sustainable. So this kind of a balance which is so required in policy making is what we have carefully done, and that is showing results. So what is there in it for us? The fact that Indian economy is recovering like this, and our youth are also severely, very seriously contributing to it. Many countries abroad recognize that there's something about India which is really showing up so positively, and as a result you have a lot of recognition globally saying, how did you all manage it? And in that, therefore, there's a lot of respect for India, and that is why you find Honorable Prime Minister Modi being received by world leaders with a great sense of appreciation. Today I know Prime Minister is holding a rally here. But you also saw last night, the French president has invited him to watch the parade and be there in July. On 14th of July, every year, France holds one of the biggest historical events called Bastille Day, Bastille Day. Bastille is the day of the French Revolution when the fighting forces came out and said, we need liberation, we need to be free, and so on. So that is remembered like we remember our Republic Day, our Independence Day. So the Bastille Day, it is spelled B-A-S-T-I-L-L-E, Bastille. So PM has been invited to participate in that. PM is also going to attend the G7 countries, 7 top economies, and their meeting in Japan later. Similarly, in G20, India's presidency is being taken up in a very serious way for both the contents with which we are approaching the G20. G20 is 20 top nations whose economies are the top 20. G7 is top 7 economies. All these top economies today realize that India has played such a very careful, balancing, well thought through process, as a result of which a complex country, a well populated country, is able to come out of the pandemic without much of a bruise. And when PM speaks on issues, therefore there is a great sense of recognition and appreciation. And that is why you find that from Western countries there's usually this request saying PM today should speak to both Russia and Ukraine and help sorting this war out. We can't, it is dragged for a very long time, we need peace. Why do they think that PM can do it? Because he communicates with Russian president, he also spoke with Ukraine president, and let's not forget, at the start of this war, many of our students were there in Ukraine. They were literally between the fire, they were literally caught between the crosshair. How much ever you do in a war zone, you cannot predict the safety of anybody. But without even having an injury on any one of the Indian students, all of them were brought back to safety to their respective homes. That's because the PM spoke with Russian president, who spoke with Ukrainian president and said, please allow us to take our students back. Similarly, in Sudan now, where there is severe clash going on, we have brought back our people to safety. And I'm not saying this because I'm part of the Indian government, but no other country, not in Ukraine, not in Sudan, not earlier in Yemen, no other country sends special aircrafts or special warships to make sure every one of its citizens is safely picked up from there, put in one of those aircrafts or ship and brought back home. American nationals are waiting there. However much American citizens are protected everywhere, in these kind of times, no. They've not been evacuated, we have evacuated, and in the process, some of the South Asian countries' citizens, Nepalese, Bangladeshis, Sri Lankans have also been brought back. So the point that I'm trying to tell you is, India is a very responsible government. Indian government today is a responsible government which answers the need of the citizens as much as achieves such humanitarian gestures, because the way in which our Prime Minister talks with them and works out for the benefit of our citizens. If this is one story, the other story which you need to know. This morning I saw in my timeline in Twitter, a lady who has gone from Tamil Nadu. Later you might, since I've told you, you'll find out, oh, she's also part of the BJP. Maybe so, but the fact that she's brought out is going to be true for all of us. And what is it? She'd gone to Dubai. And there she did purchases. I don't know whether it was in the duty-free shops or anywhere else, paying in Indian rupees. Rupee trade. At least with 19 different countries today, you don't need to search for dollars and say a hard currency, ho to you will buy, otherwise you can't buy. Does not arise. Indian rupee is recognized. So you go there, pay through your card or through your mobile, take the QR code and say payment done in Indian rupees. The stature of Indian rupees, its stability, and the way in which it has been managed in our economy are all today there for us to see. It's not a propaganda talk I'm making. Oh, Prime Minister Modi has done very well. That is, I may say that, I will say it. It's part of my duty also to say that Indian economy is being managed very well. But individual citizens are seeing it managed very well. If you can do a payment in rupee abroad, the government has done a lot of background work to get that done. It's not going to be possible otherwise. Was it possible for the last 70 years? Was it possible at all? There are times when opposition parties tell us, oh, at our time economy was growing at 10%, whereas you're going only at 6%. 8% also sometimes we used to grow. You're growing at only 6%. It's not great. Right, it's all right. You were growing at 10% or 8%. Let me tell you what that meant for Indian citizens. You may have grown at 8%. At that time is when maximum corruption happened. You know, actually speaking, let me tell you, even as a political worker, the number 1,76,000 crores was a shocker to me. Do you all have any remembering of that 1,76,000 crores? You don't? 1766? No, 176 followed by millions of zeros. Sorry, not million, but that many number of zeros. Did you ever happen to see that kind of a number put out? It was during 2010 and 14, during the UPA rule. I'm sorry, I'm mentioning the party and saying Congress party led UPA rule. That corruption to that extent had happened within one ministry, and that was telecom ministry. The Congress party might argue saying, but that was notional. You know, CAG put that number out. Oh, it's impossible to make that kind of money. They'll say all that. If that happened in telecom, it happened in coal ministry as well. 122, if I remember correct, coal mines were put for auction, and in each one of them, monies were paid as kickbacks. And not every time when seriously auction is being done by government, will Supreme Court, after the High Court, after the Session Court, after all that hearing, when the case comes to the Supreme Court says this is massive corruption. The entire 122 mine auctions will have to be stopped. Happened during that time, 2010 to 14. Every day you wake up to hear this is what is happening. People who invested in India said, boss, we cannot do business here, we are going out. They happily went out. If national level this kind of corruption was seen, for the first time we saw it, and that's exactly what Modi is very different from the previous administrations. And when the world sees India today, earlier they saw India as thoroughly corrupt. Doing business is impossible in this country. It's full of red tape. Whereas what they are seeing now the last 10 years, and in fact even the almost nearly 14, 15 years of his being Chief Minister of Gujarat, is clean administration, no corruption whatsoever. And that's why it was, you know, the expression came in saying no red tape, but we will extend red carpet for businesses to come and do here. We don't need any kickbacks from anybody. So, till today, not one whisper of corruption against Prime Minister Modi or his entire cabinet. I want that to be registered. So India's image, so when I'm talking of India's image abroad, these are the things which stand in the minds of people, which stay in the minds of the people, saying it's an administration which is transparent, it's an administration which is effective because every house is getting drinking water. About poverty eradication, the kind of ways in which you are empowering citizen, not giving them an entitlement. Mujhe ye milna hi chahiye. No, it is more you are in that category, you will get it anyway, irrespective of your gender, class, community, religion, whatever, you get it. There are no favoritisms here. That's why this whole narrative of no appeasement politics. Everybody gets everything for which they are eligible. And therefore it is a policy-driven approach, not a preference or subjective, I like a certain section, so I will do it for them and not for the others. It doesn't happen that way. And finally, because I'm standing in a women's college, the steps taken during the last 7-8 years, whether it is at the time of birth of girl child, many states like Haryana and Tamil Nadu stand out where in the womb girl children were finished. They had no choice to be born. So there's a huge campaign happening since then to build awareness saying, girl or boy, your child is valuable. And that is bearing results. Today the gender ratio in Haryana or in any other state are all now coming closer to being natural. For every 1,000 boys, Haryana used to have only 700, 800 like that. Today it's all coming to some manageable ratio. A lot of support for nutrition for children, nutrition for mothers. Besides that, also making sure the policy addresses the need for funds for girl-driven policies. There was a time when we spoke, Prime Minister Modi was keeping girl at the center in all his policies, which is true. But now, girl is in the front. It's a woman-led development, which is what is our policy. And by saying something which I'll say now, you will say back again, you're going to talk about women as a productive agency, meaning she bears the child. But even for that, it is Prime Minister Modi who brought in that amendment to give 6 months of maternity leave. Earlier it was only about 4.5 months, 4.5 to 5 weeks. It has been enhanced. 6 weeks, 3 months. All right, sorry. So the increase has been during this period and not earlier, but that is not to say that's the end of the story. It is to say that that approach to take care of every aspect of women's life. In the recent budget, we gave a Bachat Patra, saving scheme for women, where she would get a higher rate of interest, 7.5, and that for the next 3 years she can hold that and get the returns. But it has to be in the woman's name. Over and above this, which you may think is a token step, but which has had great impact. Yes, ma'am was introducing me saying my daughter was also in armed forces, but I understand that was a slip and she understands that. She's not in the armed forces, but it was during this time, between 14 and 19, Prime Minister Modi ensured that women can enter equally into the armed forces, whether it's Army, Navy, or Air Force and in the Coast Guard. Recruitments are happening today that women can be in the forefront of the war, and postings are also given accordingly. There is no difference between man and woman in the armed forces anymore, thanks to Prime Minister Modi. And in the civilian lines, one data which I'll put before you and end my opening remarks. Because of all this atmosphere, in the civilian airlines industry, India has the highest number of pilots who are women. Highest in the world. And I can never forget one or two long-haul flights, Delhi to San Francisco, Delhi to Washington, New York, are today completely womaned. Completely manned it used to be. You know, they're all manned by somebody. They're all womaned by woman. Complete staff, you know, pilot, flight pursuer, or the flight attendants, everybody is woman. So we have shown to the world that irrespective of what kind of campaign, negative campaign they may do of India, Indian women play their role. And it's not symbolic when the President of India is a woman, and particularly coming from the background, the tribal background from which she is on her individual effort and spirit come up. She became an MLA, a minister, and also spent a lot of time to make sure her village gets a school out of her personal fund. And the achievements of Rashtrapati, Mananiya Rashtrapati ji, is not small. Today she is risen there. Similarly, the ministers. So, India has bright future. For the next 25 years, we've given a first budget this year in which technology, artificial intelligence, green energy, hydrogen mission are all very futuristic. We are not talking about the same things all over again. In all that, you may have a very big role to play. And in that, please don't underestimate the skill sets you have to acquire, the languages that you have to acquire, not just Indian languages. I strongly suggest, and I was telling your management, you need to have various different language options so that even as you train for something, you need to have the skill to learn and speak in some languages with which your global positioning will be improved. So not taking much more time, I can always answer some of the questions. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. A great time to see you all. Thank you.
It was indeed a great session, ma'am. We were thinking how India can manage inflation so well when the Western countries are predicting 60% and 80% of inflation. Thank you so much, ma'am, for helping us understand those important points. And to make a note here, the one who frames the budget of this country with the think tank can be so simple and down to earth is one of the greatest lessons you have taught to our students. Thank you so much, ma'am. Let us now proceed towards question and answer session. For moderating this session, now I welcome our principal, Dr. P.V. Padmaja, ma'am.
Good morning. Ma'am, thank you for that wonderful opening remark, and you have set the context for question answers. Our students have, we circulated a Google form, and they have filled up and they have given some questions, ma'am. Around 90 questions we have received, and when we sum up, there are some few questions about inflation, tackling inflation, and then, you know, there are a few questions about, you know, skill development, and how we dream about, you know, making India a $5 trillion economy, and how we can contribute as youth, what would be our role in making our country as one of the most developed nations of the world. So with your permission, ma'am, I'll start the questions. Ma'am? Yeah.
I hope you've not censored questions. No?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Let it be
It's
freely anything that which has come from
we
your
have
students.
only refined it, and we can also pass on the mic to the few students we have who have given the questions to us. This is a question from Kritika, first BCA, Bachelor of Computer Science. India has a high percentage of young population. Madam, how do you think Government of India intends to engage this young population? This is her question, ma'am. Kritika, first BCA, is she present? Yeah. This is her question.
Is there anything else you want to add to the question?
Ma'am, like we are paying highest price for petrol and also towards GST. How are we getting benefit from these?
No, just say that again. I'm not sure if this mic is all right. You're paying highest price for petrol and for GST. So
How are we getting benefit from these, ma'am?
I'm happy you asked it right up front.
Yes.
Please sit down.
Thank you.
It's not going to be a good answer though. You may not like the answer, but I'll still tell you because it's the fact. Where does petrol come from? Do we have enough refineries, oil wells in India? Are we not importing it? And when we import it, do we not pay the price for the crude oil import? And post the crude oil import, does it not go through a huge refining process? And only after that refining is it ready for you to use? And therefore, for a product which is not even available in India, equally, I'll give another example. You may not have had it in your question. Fertilizers. We don't have enough fertilizer in this country. We import it from Jordan, Morocco, some of the North African, Mediterranean countries where it is abundant, and also from Russia. Just as the fuel price, the fertilizer price also went up 6-7 times during 2020. We still had to import it because our farmers cannot produce otherwise. They were not passed on to the farmers. Similarly, where it was possible, we reduced the central excise duty on petrol and diesel. Diesel not much, but petrol. Not much meaning not much of a consumption in comparison to petrol. We reduced it. So where it is possible, and I'm not even talking politics saying states did not reduce, some state reduced, others did not, and others who did not are suffering higher inflation than the national average of inflation. So where it was possible, we have brought it down. And you're all students, but I want to say this, and therefore I want to say it in a way. GST, the question implies you're paying much more in the name of GST taxation. Yeah? Goods and service taxation. You're paying much more than what was not GST time. Right, ma'am? Is that what you understood? That is factually incorrect. I'm sorry, ma'am. And I can send you any number of data to show why that is factually incorrect. At the time when GST was brought in, if you brought in most goods at 11%, at 15% tax, it would have meant that neither the consumer was paying more, nor is the government earning more. Whereas, if it was brought in at that level, today you know where the GST's average lies? Not at 15, which is never revenue neutral. It's at 11%. Which means, actually I could have earned more, but no items have become, compared to the pre-GST era, it's become cheaper. And that is ordinary shoes, chappals, toothpaste, soap, detergent, oil. You take every household item. So GST, not one item's taxation has increased to say it's become more expensive than pre-GST era. So ma'am, unless you have something to prove me wrong, I would want you to consider your question. GST is making goods cheaper rather than more expensive.
Ma'am, this is a question from Yashika Singh of first year BBA. Poverty alleviation is one of the goals of the government across the world. Ma'am, what is the plan of Indian government towards poverty alleviation? We don't mean freebies. Okay. Measures to increase the standard of living of people. That's exactly what she is asking. Have we set any target by which year we intend to reach certain increase in the standard of living of people?
A very interesting question, and I'll appreciate whoever has asked it. I don't know if the student is here.
Me.
Thank you very much. See, poverty alleviation, in fact, can be achieved through various different measures. If you recognize that the citizen will have to be accessing some of the basic facilities, post which he can decide how he and his children will have to, he or she and their children will have to find their own path, it is one way. It's a different way to say, you're below the poverty line that the government has determined, so here we go, we give you some money, and that's the end of the story. And I'm happy the question itself recognizes we are not talking about freebies. And that's where Prime Minister Modi's attempt to provide housing, to provide water access directly through tap in the house, electricity. Many of our South Indian states don't realize it because electricity mostly here was accessible at the village level and at some houses level. In many of the states, in some other regions, village also did not receive electricity. After the village comes the housings. So electricity, basic toilet facility, basic access by road, basic health services, minimum primary health center, and without having to pay rupee or cash, or without having to prove with your ration card or anything else, to be able to access medical aid. All these are being done now. And that is because the identity has been established through technology. You're able to provide them a bank account, give them direct benefit transfer, give them houses through a PM Awas Yojana where you're not discriminated against. You get what? Your water, electricity, some level of cooking gas subsidy. You, if anything, ma'am, the first question person should have added LPG cylinders. Even they are shooting up. Even there we are only able to give some kind of subsidy, but not as much as you would want. Even that's an imported item. So, to provide all this and be able to show centers where they can go and take skilling, get 5 lakh worth of treatment without having to pay any cash. And for senior citizens to give them some kind of a pension with minimum 1 rupee paid as premium are all ways in which the poor are being helped to improve their standard of living. So I would think this approach of empowerment of the poor rather than entitlement of the poor is a better, dignified and self-respecting way for the poor to become better.
Ma'am, this question is from Vanishri of us BBA. How can a company show positive net income but go bankrupt? What is Government of India's measure to prevent such happenings?
Well, this is not a straightforward government-related matter because there are chartered accountants who look at the company's, balance sheets. They look at what is right, what is not. They also warn the managements and the promoters about how best to handle their cash and how best to put in their entries, how to comply with the regulators in terms of taxation or in terms of company registrations and so on. So, and also there are completely detached from this setup, the credit rating agencies which look at the companies and their health. there are instances, I can quite understand why this question is being asked like this. There are instances where credit rating agencies have given AAA rating to companies which have collapsed within a month. So naturally, this question comes up, and this has less to do with government, more to do with agencies which are there authorized to deal with it. Regulators, chartered accountants, cost accountants, and people who certify their books, and also the way in which companies themselves, whether they are board driven or individual person driven. So all these determines how companies and their company health situation is. And then the government comes in to see when it collapses, how to protect the people who have put in money there. There are laws which govern it. So on a day-to-day basis, the government doesn't look into the balance sheet. It is authorized people who are looking at it.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, here is a question from Manasa of 3rd BCom A. Earlier in your opening remark also, you were talking about emerging sectors. So, how do you plan to encourage more investment in emerging sectors like renewable energy, electric mobility, and digital infrastructure, while ensuring the stability and growth of traditional sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, and services?
Agriculture may be a traditional sector, but today it has all modern ways of doing things. Drones are going in to spray fertilizers. Drones are also going there to see the extent to which the cultivation is happening and the density of the crop, and so on. So technology, soil health is determined by technology. There are people sitting in some faraway place to say, what is the level of soil's fertility in your area, in your pocket, in your piece of land, and then also advising you on what level of micronutrients you have to add into it. So even agriculture is getting now benefit of science and technology. Of course, traditional agriculturists do have their traditional knowledge, which is also equally important. So there is no sector which is anymore strictly going by the old methods only. They are benefiting and bringing value addition by using many of the newer developments. Renewable energy is something which you've said. 175 gigawatts of renewable energy has been brought in post 2015, I think, when in Paris COP21, Prime Minister went and set nationally determined commitments. Our movement towards establishing solar power is far higher, and that is why you find the price dropping. Earlier it used to be 14.25 rupees per unit cost. Today it's come down to single digits. It's somewhere between 2.45 and 3 or something like that. So rampant increase in numbers of establishing solar parks is bringing the benefit down, the cost down, and the benefits are reaching common people as well. The farmer who's keeping in his hedge of the farm solar panels is using it for his pump. At the same time, he can upload it to the grid. So are the rooftops where you're having solar panels. The entire border area of Gujarat and Rajasthan in particular, which is so much of a desert land, today is huge solar capacities. Similarly, in South Tamil Nadu, the biggest solar power park has been established. So renewable energy has received a lot of attention. It will continue to receive. But other than that, in manufacturing, the newer areas are semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, also looking at electronics, chips, and so on, and also looking at many of the renewable components which you need, medical devices. For all of this, we have given production-linked incentive scheme through which nearly 14 sectors are benefiting out of it.
Ma'am, here is a question. India is a developing economy We have been hearing about it from a very long time, ma'am. We are eager to see India among the world's most advanced nations. Our PM talks about India becoming $5 trillion economy. We want to see it happen. Ma'am, what is that we the youth can do to make it happen soon? And is there a set goal or a priority in the next 5 years that you have set to reach this $5 trillion economy?
It's in your hands. So the more enterprising you are, it's going to be faster. The more energetic you are and more conscious and questioning that you are, the system is going to improve. So it's left to you, but the government will have to be sure that the policies that we make are going to help and facilitate such entrepreneurship which is there in our young.
Okay. Ma'am, our teachers and trainers will always say that we should set goals and work towards the accomplishment of the same. Ma'am, had you ever thought of you becoming a finance minister of this country? Do you feel that you had set a goal and you have achieved the goals in your life?
Not going to be a nice answer for you, but no, I didn't think ever that I'll be a finance minister of this country.
First, this is from a student called Kirtana, and she is from first year undergraduate
How
stream.
come only first year students ask questions?
No, second and final years are
Second
also
and third years have given up? Where's Kirtana? She's not here.
there. First year BCA student. She's not come?
Anyway, I'm sure she's hearing this reply. No, I didn't ever think I'll be the finance minister. In fact, I didn't think I'll be in politics. And I don't know why I wasn't asked, did you ever think you'll be defense minister? No, I didn't think I'll be a defense minister either. Yes, it's important to have ambition. My ambition was not to become defense minister. Not that I didn't want to. I mean, like, it wasn't in this area of activity at all. In fact, when I was finishing school and getting into college, my ambition was to become a good lawyer, which I didn't become. But now, one thing is for sure, which is a message which can possibly be in somewhere in the back of your minds. Wherever you are, whenever you are, whatever you're doing, it's important to do it fully with mindfulness. And you do it to the best of your ability. That's all. And if I take my case, I strongly believe there was some force above me which has taken me from one to another. I don't think it's anything to do with me. But one thing for sure, which I will want to continue as a quality, is where I am, I should do my best. And I should not be brought to shame. So I shouldn't bring shame, or I shouldn't bring, disappointment in the minds of people who have brought me here, is probably the only goal which I keep for myself. I don't know if that's of any use for you all. But do your best where you are. And do your best and be absolutely honest about what you're doing. Nothing can stop you to go where you want to go.
Ma'am, this is a question from Geeta HD, MLA FGCW, second BCom. Geeta?
She's here.
She's here. Ma'am, as a young, this is question addressed to you, ma'am. When you were young, college-going student, who was your role model? Now, as Finance Minister of India, who is your role model?
Not one person. There have been several people for several things. So no one individual. So actually there's no point in me saying A, B, C, D. There are several people for several things that I've felt, wow, look at that. And that's helped me a lot. So, no individual, several individuals.
Thank you, ma'am.
And male and female, huh? Not just women, men and women.
Ma'am, this question is from Reshma S, second BCom, MLFGCW. Reshma is over there. You were the defense minister. You are the finance minister now. The two are not the same. How was the transition from defense minister to finance minister? How did you prepare yourself taking up these two different roles?
There was no transition time given to me. Get and do the job. That was all. No transition time.
Ma'am, you have lot of responsibilities relating to this country. At times, things may pressurize you. What keeps you motivated all the time? What message you have for young girls like us to manage the adversities of life? This is from Diksha MP of Us Become A section. Diksha.
Please sit down. I don't think there's one stock answer for this. Each one of us will have to devise our own ways in which we can cope with pressure. It can be sitting and talking with whom you have a lot of trust and faith. It can be reading a book. It can be listening to some music which is soothing, not a music which can agitate you. It can be just sitting and doing nothing. I'm saying this consciously because you can always twist and say, oh my God, finance minister said she sits and does nothing. There are times when you want to be to yourself because it helps in thinking about how you conducted yourself, what you could have done better, and what is it that you don't want to let you be worried about. It is important to be to yourself for some time in a day. You don't have to be always engaged in something. At least give yourself some time, let's say before the bed, before you go to sleep, but give it consciously to yourself. These are ways in which you can definitely keep composed. There's a proverb in Tamil. My mother tongue is Tamil, so I quote from Tamil. Not that I'm against Kannada. There are 5 fingers in the hand, right? So they are differently shaped and differently sized. So when there is a swelling in a finger, which is a pain, right? Which is a problem. That swelling is according to each of the finger. That much that the thumb swells will not be the size to which your small finger will swell. So for each according to themselves is the challenge. But each has to solve it out in their own way. So the way in which a thumb swelling sorts itself out cannot be applicable to the small fingers. So each one of us will have to devise that. So each one of us have to devise a way in which So each one of us will have to devise a way in which we can sort it out. That's why I'm saying read a book or sit with somebody with whom you have a comfort in talking out, who you trust, or listen to music which is comforting and soothing, or just be with yourself, just walk around in a small garden, whatever. So we'll have to have consciously efforts made to find these kind of alternatives through which you can be back to being what you want to be.
Ma'am, as PM's convoy is coming this side, they are closing the roads. So there is an instruction from the team that we have to wind up the session. Thank you so much for coming over here and addressing the audience and taking this QA session.
Hey, thank you very much. You've been a great audience. I enjoyed myself. Thank you very much.
I request all of you to stand up for national anthem. And after the national anthem, please give way for the dignitaries to move out of the auditorium. And then the children, you can go later on. Please, okay? Wait for the dignitaries. Just 30 seconds and we will start the national anthem. National. Yeah. We can begin the national anthem. Janagana mana adinayaka jaya he Bharat bhagya vidhata Punjab Sindhu Gujarat Maratha Dravida Utkala Vanga Vindhya Himachala Yamuna Ganga Uchala Jaladi Taranga तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभाशिष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जनगण मंगल